Welcome to the Ecommerce Marketing Podcast, the highly rated digital marketing podcast that provides weekly digital marketing tips and strategies from some of the world's top digital marketers and e-commerce entrepreneurs that will help you take your digital marketing to the next level. Sit back and enjoy this power-packed episode hosted by Arlen Robinson, who is an e-commerce entrepreneur and digital marketing expert with over 20 years of experience. Hey, e-commerce marketing podcast listener. Are you looking to increase traffic and sales to your website? You can do this by launching your own affiliate program. Just visit getosi.com and sign up for a free trial today. That's getosi.com. Now get ready to hear from your e-commerce marketing expert of the week as they drill down to give you details on marketing strategies that can help grow your business.
Welcome back to the E-commerce Marketing Podcast, everyone. My name is Arlen Robinson, and I am your host. And today we have a very special guest, Reid Carr, who is the founder and CEO of Red Door Interactive. With over 25 years of marketing experience, Reid Carr built Red Door Interactive to be a fiercely independent, nationally renowned full funnel marketing agency. RDI was founded to help enterprise clients fuse brand with performance marketing to help them break through creatively and grow market share. With decades of experience in strategy development and brand performance marketing, Carr specializes in standout, creative, optimized by a data-driven, full funnel, multi-channel approach to meaningful results. Welcome to the podcast, Reid.
Oh, happy to be here. It's a mouthful, isn't it?
Yeah. You know, you've done a lot. I think, we were talking at the beginning, both of us have really been in this tech space for a long time. I think our company, OSI Affiliate Software, has maybe got you beat by a couple of years, or you've got us beat by a couple of years.
No, you guys got us. We're at 21 right now.
Okay, got it. So you've been 25 years of experience, but the company itself is about 21 years. Okay.
Yeah, which I don't know. Dog years at this point is probably 40, 50 years, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. When it comes to businesses, it's it's a blessing to be able to sustain a technology business for this long. So, I'm definitely thankful for the journey and to be able to still be at it. Cause as I know you've probably been there as well. We've seen a ton of businesses that kind of came up with us that are, long gone,
Yeah.
So it's,
it's pretty astounding. And really grateful for every bit of it.
Yeah, definitely. Well, today we're going to be diving deep on a topic that I'm really excited about. We're going to be talking about how digital content optimization can increase your brand's visibility. And so I'm super excited to see, what you're going to be able to add to that conversation. But before we do get into all of that, why don't you share just a little bit more about your background and, specifically how you did get into what you're doing today?
Yeah, at this stage, the majority of it is just running Red Door. It's been 21 years of this as our CEO, executive creative director, and I think everything prior to that was building up to this point. I loved advertising, so that's what I went to school for, University of Oregon School of Journalism Communications for advertising. And then started my career at TBWA Chiat/Day in LA. Okay. Worked on the Nissan account predominantly there. Then went, the web was just taking off. That's 1999-ish. I graduated in 98. Okay. And so, there was a .com incubator, a company that was trying to build all sorts of online businesses. And that was that era of, if you build it, they will come. So we were building a whole lot of those real fast. Mm-hmm. And that was a lot of experience in a very short amount of time. Mm-hmm. But that's when I fell in love with analytics and data and what that could do, because my training at school, there was a lot of training related to what's called account planning. So trying to find those insights, trying to understand the audiences. And then when you build it with, analytics, well, at the time it was log file analysis, now analytics, mm-hmm. You all of a sudden were exposed to all this information on an ongoing basis of where are people going? What are they doing? How did they get there? What are they reacting to? And so I went to, so at that point, I really thought it was important to make sure that whatever messages we were giving to people were consistent from every touch point. And so I went to an integrated agency. I'd never really desired to start my own. I was happy to work for others. But at that time I went to an agency, and that gave me the opportunity to move to San Diego, which, from LA, I absolutely love.
Right.
And it was an integrated agency, and can't see it. These are in air quotes, because at that point in time it was a PR, group, a marketing group, or an advertising group, and a web group. Imagine like thinking web was just this one person could do that thing, right? And
Right.
so, it was basically what I saw at that point was three different departments who really didn't interact with one another, all just trying to sell to the same person.
Right.
And so that was the birth of Red Door, was this idea that using data, using insights, identifying, how are consumers reacting, or buyers reacting to what we're providing to them. What is it? How do we kind of manage that through every part of every touch point through the overall experience?
Mm-hmm.
And that brings us to where we are today. I mean, I think what we're going to talk about, it's all this opportunity to touch customers, touch buyers, consumers, whatever it's B2B, B2C.
Yeah.
What point are they in their journey? What is it we need to provide them at that point in time? And how do we move them along this continuum to become, loyal customers that's built on the idea of what does a brand even stand for?
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah, good stuff. Yeah, and it really sounds like you guys were really just kind of early in on the game, starting 21 years ago, when, that kind of whole concept of, and what you guys are doing with analyzing where customers are coming from, their touch points. I mean, this was kind of, when you guys started, I mean, that was really kind of pre-social media, I
yeah,
guess. And, there was some
isn't
things
that
that were,
wild? Yeah, I mean,
yeah,
it was. It's funny to tell people now, certainly young people who join the company, of like, yeah, Facebook and Twitter and all that stuff wasn't around yet.
right, exactly.
So, and that was the idea when we named it Red Door. The word interactive part of it was this change from broadcast, where you weren't expecting anything back. You would just broadcast messages and expect people to react to them and, make a purchase or whatever.
Yeah,
And, we were seeing message boards and some of these other things were starting to show up, where we're encouraging our clients to get out there and interact with the consumer, with their buyer.
yeah, yeah,
Now I think it's become somewhat synonymous with digital, but at the
right.
same token, it really wasn't the intent. And I think now we're back in a new era. I hope we're in this era now where brands really do respect their customers in that way and say,
Yeah.
I need to get out in the wild and engage.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. And speaking of getting out in the wild and engaging, of course, most of the ways that businesses can do that, e-commerce businesses specifically, is via content and reaching people via
Yeah.
content and
Yep.
displaying a message. And so I want to see if you can kind of start off by explaining just this whole concept of digital content optimization, and really why is it so important for e-commerce businesses today?
Yeah, I mean, one thing is important, to frame it, obviously, digital content, it's all the different artifacts that we have that we would call as content. That's could become one big bucket. I mean, in
Yeah.
terms of what you might be doing in social, what you could do in a blog post on your website, all the different ways to produce some piece that you're going to put in front of potential buyers. And so, I think it's always difficult where people want to start at the idea of content and how do we optimize that content without necessarily having the narrative of what does our brand stand for. And we're big, so we kind of would talk about our process of informed storytelling. So breaking that apart into pieces is how are you getting informed, which
Mhm.
is what are the customers doing, what are consumers doing, who are they, what do they think, feel, and believe, what motivates them, and really understand that. So we come from a place of being informed about what their needs are on a day-to-day basis, which will connect to then what content do you need to create, and
Right.
and so on. Getting into the idea of the story is what's that narrative arc that takes someone
Mhm.
from not knowing who you are at the top of the funnel of awareness, and how do you get to the point where they become a loyal or raving fan at the other end of that spectrum. So
Mhm.
where are they in that arc? Because it is a different moment in time at the top of the funnel when they don't know who you are, what you stand for, down to the point where they're willing to tell everyone and anyone about how great you are.
Yeah.
And then the telling component of it is where you're going to tell that story, where you're going to tell that part of that story.
Mhm.
So that's really where, for us, it starts of how do we optimize all that is optimizing. Do we know enough about our customer? Do we know where we are with the story? And is that resonating? Are we optimizing the story?
Yeah.
Does it resonate? And then on an individual basis, then there's some real nuanced type of stuff that you can do on a granular level to make it continuously better.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's a lot of times I think businesses sometimes they neglect the storytelling aspect of it. I've had a lot of other guests on the podcast where we've talked about storytelling actually even recently. And brands these days and any business these days, of course, is going to be eager to get that in sale and is eager to just say, okay, this is us, this is what we do, these are our products, these are the features, come buy us. But doesn't work like that, unfortunately. It's the age old saying is always that stories sell, not facts and figures. People want to be able to connect with a brand these days. I think more than ever, they want to know, what is this brand about? How does this tie into their needs and their problems? And how do you convey that as a brand successfully via messaging? And that's the challenge.
Yeah, I mean, facts and figures oftentimes it justifies a decision they've already made. It's like, I want to work with you. Just give me these facts and figures that I can tell, particularly in like a B2B space, for example, is saying, hey, I feel something's right about this. And then they can say, well, and it's because of this, because of this, because of this. But that wasn't really why they made that decision. Ultimately, it was made and they were justifying what they were doing.
Exactly. They already established that connection, and that, this is the brand I'm going with. And then this, the substantiating facts and figures, it's just, they help. You got to have them there. But at the end of the day, their decision is made. So you're totally right about that.
For sure.
Now, under this whole umbrella of, digital marketing, there's a lot under it, there's a lot of different aspects of it. So I wanted to see, can you, really, how does this whole digital content optimization, how does it differ from just the traditional SEO, search engine optimization techniques? And, how does it contribute to that, just this increased brand visibility?
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's a lot of dimension to that, right? So if you get down, someone's saying, hey, we're going to, focus on SEO. A lot of times you get down to very technical details, page load speed, things like that, which are absolutely important factors, but it's not where you're getting into the idea of, am I producing the right kind of content for the right people? Are they, and when I say the right people, there are certain emotional considerations, perspective, attributes, yet at a content level, they might not, for example, search that way. Or, one of an old school example, and this was from a long time ago, but back, one of our clients, getting them to start to think and speak the way their customer thinks and speaks. It was pretty often that they would categorize the stuff they have at an e-com level was as apparel, for example. We sell apparel, and no one searches for apparel. They search for clothes. Exactly. They search for things pretty specifically, right? So making these little shifts and nuance in the way they think, I mean, I can't emphasize enough that you really can't optimize content. You can do the technical SEO in one form, but it really can't optimize content unless you know your audience, what they look for. And there are things sometimes people want to tell a customer, and the customers just don't care. They're not looking for it. They're not searching for it. And that's just a different part of the story. Later on, once they're there, maybe you do that in a different format. So for example, from a content standpoint, you might say, hey, I'm trying to change this perception about a category, but first and foremost at the narrative arc, they have certain predisposition, things that they know already about a category that you need to satisfy first to get them even to talk to you. And once you move them through the cycle, then it's going to get into, those maybe some unique perspective you have that no one else has. And that might be told through a video. It might be told through a diagram, something that really helps to start to shape in their mind why your version or whatever it is you sell is better than somebody else's.
Exactly.
So,
they've already established just the idea of, what's your brand about, what are their needs, how is your brand going to meet their needs, and then it's just up to you to kind of craft that whole story around it, and how you're going to enter their lives, solve their problem, and do it the best that you can, as opposed to the competitors that are in the same space.
And it's still a tight relationship with those who have the technical knowledge of SEO, of social, and things like that. But you really kind of have to have that balance of, I understand you could technically optimize this piece of content, but that's not that part of the story, and I want to put that in a different place. So
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that's what marketers really have to probably manage the most, is to allocate time. There's like, so many resources, so much time.
Hmm.
How do you allocate resources such that people are focused on, if you're the SEO person, they're focused on the right type of content part of the story, down to the folks who are doing the social part and their part of that story and
Hmm.
what they need to satisfy. So
Yeah.
balancing all that and being the voice of the customer, is one of the hardest things I think for maybe the non-technical folks to try to manage.
Yeah, 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 really for sure. Yeah, I mean, it definitely is a balancing act. We mentioned at the beginning that things are a lot different now than they were, 21 years ago when you started. Now we have social media, we have, a million and one different
Right.
channels in which you can kind of get out there and display your messaging and try to connect with your audience. And so these days, how does an e-commerce business leverage just different types of digital content, such as the blog post, product description content, multimedia from video to audio,
Yep.
just to improve their overall brand visibility?
Yeah, I mean, so as much as things have changed, right? There's a ton of stuff that's still the same, right?
Yeah.
And the thing it will have, it's very much category specific too. Again, at a consumer level. So if you're selling e-com like apparel, and your
Hmm.
value proposition about being the softest apparel out there or something, that's
Yeah.
a tough sell in this environment. So where you kind of focus that part of the story of the content is what's going to get people to see it that way is,
Hmm.
one is, your content might be focused on maybe testimonials. It might be certainly people who would validate for others that it's truly soft. There might be video or imagery that shows things at a detailed level that really articulate why or how at a technical level it is so soft.
Hmm.
Whereas, if you're selling like hardware or something like that, or a tool that helps you do something, it's, a lot of video that might
Yeah.
show like interesting use cases or why my product will satisfy a need that you may have that might be different than my competitors. So, it is really important that people, again, get back down to this idea of what's going to convince, what's going to do the job to move people to the next level. And
Yeah.
that's what I think too many people try to get from, all the way to the top to all the way to the bottom of the funnel in one piece of content or one
Yeah.
ad or something like
Yeah.
that. And some of it is you need to get in the game.
Hmm.
What is it gets you in the game? What is it helps you win that game? And what does it get them to that advocacy thing is another piece of content of how do you encourage somebody who is a fan to
Yeah.
tell others, and how do you give them the right tools, which might include content, words, images, what encouragement, whatever that may be, to tell others about the use cases that are really critically important to getting people to convert to the sale and so on. So,
Yeah.
um, I think that the role of the different pieces of content, there's just abundance in channels, like as you
Hmm.
said,
Yeah.
and that the ones that are going to be most important oftentimes are going to be related either to your category or to your value proposition
Hmm.
as it connects to and differs, I should say, from competitors or alternatives. Which another
Yeah.
thing too, people forget a lot of times that their competitor isn't necessarily a direct competitor. It might be
Hmm.
apathy. Their competitor might be an injury, like another way to solve that problem.
Right.
And so when we start to back that up and spend enough time with a consumer, which I think when we talk about e-com brands, for example, is I think not enough of them get out in the wild and observe a customer in a physical environment using their product,
Hmm.
or in a physical retail environment where maybe they don't have physical retail, their product isn't sold in physical retail, but you might go observe another product like yours in that
Yeah.
category. And how do people, like, are they pulling it off the shelf? Are they feeling it? What is their experience? And so now you can start to think content, what's going to solve that problem, and why do they do what they do?
Yeah.
It's too easy sometimes to sit behind a screen
Hmm.
and pretend like you know.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I mean, ultimately, it just goes down to, you got to get it out there, get it in the hands of people. What are they saying? How are they communicating this online, in
Yep.
the different social posts? And then from there, craft the message. You made one very excellent point where a lot of times brands craft a piece of content and they want that to serve as just the complete funnel from,
Yeah.
beginning to end to take people from, you know, the initial brand awareness to all the
Yep.
way down to purchasing it. But unfortunately, it doesn't quite work like that. There are,
Doesn't.
certain cases where, yeah, maybe it can work for certain people where,
Yep.
you kind of you hit that person at the right time. They had already been kind of, investigating your brand similar to yours, and then they came across yours, and, it was kind of easy for them to digest what you put out there and say, oh, okay, they see the value proposition in what you're offering, and they can pull the trigger.
Yeah.
That happens, but not that often.
Well, another place it happened, or it can, or I mean, it has a lot to do with the type of, is it a major considered purchase? Is it an impulse buy? What's the risk if they buy you and are wrong about it?
Mm-hmm.
A piece of content that could kind of take someone from top to bottom could be it's a low cost, low consideration, low risk product, and someone's like, I don't like, they read it, it's cool, good enough.
Yeah.
Hit submit, easy return, whatever those things may be.
Yeah.
And I go, cool, sounds good, I'm in. And then, and we do, for example, like a home builder, you're like, well, that's not, they're not just gonna, there's no one piece of content that's going to sell someone on, buying their dream home. It's going to be a major considered purchase. And a lot of that, and what people also don't always think about too, is major considered purchase areas is content that may not even really be yours that influences their purchase. So in other words,
you're right.
What are the schools like in the neighborhood? What are the, and those are, when they do that research, are they finding what they need to find? Mm-hmm. And if they're not there, how do you help make that happen? Do you help connect people to because they may need to see it from a third party and not from you. They're not going to trust you on certain things. Mm-hmm. So are you making it easy for them to find those third parties that are going to validate a purchase? Are do things like that out even exist? And if not, do you need to create, and we've had cases where you do have to create an organization of competitors. So a long time ago, because we benefited being in this industry for a long time, we had to work with the Wi-Fi, like convince people that Wi-Fi is going to be a thing. So we worked on Wi-Fi, WiMAX, Bluetooth, stuff like that, and commit. Yeah. So there was a lot of the WiMAX Alliance and the Wi-Fi Alliance of all these competing brands that had to create another piece of content to help people talk about the idea of what Wi-Fi is, regardless of who you bought from.
Exactly. Yeah, it's really interesting. I mean, there's just so much into it that influences people's decision, and I think you also nailed it. It's not necessarily just your content. It's kind of everything kind of around that. And so you have to be cognizant of, all those things that are kind of around, your content piece. And kind of brings me to my next question is really kind of also comes down to when we're speaking of content, because content ultimately is tied to keywords. I mean, what role does this whole keyword research play into digital content optimization? And how does, e-commerce business identify those best and most effective keywords for their particular niche?
Yeah, I mean, this is one of those ones you could spend a lot of time on, right? Is what are the ones that are most like, as I mentioned, what are the things that people are looking for at a high level? But once you get past all of that, it does get to a little bit more technical detail of what's winnable, compared to competitors. What are your quick wins? What are the things that are worth putting the effort and time into? Certainly when we do all enterprise level stuff, and you're dealing with some of the best on the other side that are trying to beat you too. So what is truly ownable? And when you get a win, how do you keep the win? And that's going to be not just that. You want to win the keywords, but intent, SEO, search intent, optimization. Where are the gaps? What are the things you need to pay for at a paid search level to balance what traffic that you might win or lose? And so supporting all of that, obviously at a technical level, then you are, again, at enterprise, it is page, not just at the keyword level, but of the keywords and the ones we know that are ranking, are we doing the things that we can to move to that next level? Might be, accessibility. It might be the page load, page speed load, some of those other very technical details, because it's worth winning on that key phrase.
Exactly.
And it's, when you're dealing with real big, enterprise stuff, I mean, you can deploy a lot of effort to win on a phrase.
Yeah, for sure. And then, translating that, if we're looking at smaller e-commerce businesses, when they're entering this whole keyword space, it can be a little daunting, especially if
Yeah.
you're in a category, a product category that it's just super competitive. For example, the supplement space is
Yep.
huge these days. And so, we've got tons of these different supplements, the smoothie type products. And so if you're in that space and you're a smaller guy, it's tough. You did mention, though, there still is hope because you do have, some of the smaller hanging fruit, some of the longer tail keywords and things like that can still get you, the customer that you're looking for. But I think ultimately it does come down to, you really honing in on who your ideal customer is and then just focusing on that, because to try to compete with some of the bigger players in the space, and let's say that supplement space, it's it's I don't know, that may just be a losing battle if you're trying to come up against some of the big guys.
No, we play in that space with a very large provider, and it is kind of almost, there is an unfair advantage against the smaller ones, but then when they're also playing against other big players, and so that's where they're really duking it out. So you do really still have to look at that, like you mentioned, the long tail, and find out what are you really good at. And then it's interesting too, where we've also had success, and this again has to do with the resource, like the large enterprise resources, is creating products that are based on effectively on what are people looking for, and say, can we invest in producing particular products that satisfy gaps? And there's a lot of that. I think a lot of people do that on Amazon right now. That's not uncommon for someone to go find gaps in their inventory and create a product that's inexpensive to do in that way. But when you're playing outside of that world, it's maybe a little less common, but for some brands, it's worth it.
Yeah, definitely, for sure. That's a great tactic. Well, Reid, as we get ready to wrap things up, I just wanted to see if you could share or highlight just any quick case studies or success stories where, digital content optimization just played a significant role in improving an e-commerce business's brand visibility and their overall sales.
Yeah, I think one of my favorite ones, and it kind of talks a lot about all the other dimensions that I was talking about. So one of our clients, ASICS, and we won SEO awards for this in particular, but it's one I think that speaks to what I think philosophically works well for people, which ASICS, running shoe brand, and we built their supination, pronation guides that would talk about. So obviously, an issue is like, are you supinating, pronating, overpronation for how your foot strikes on the ground for running, and creating this guide and building out the many forms of content. At the time, there wasn't really a lot of content, not enough content, and certainly not from reputable brands in the space about how to pick the right shoe for you.
Yeah.
And so, that, as simple as that may sound, certainly today, and even then, really investing in the effort to fix a particular problem through content that, to a degree, it's self-serving in the sense that ultimately we want you to buy our shoes. But at that point, it's also somewhat altruistic, because it wasn't saying, our shoes do this. It was like, hey, this is going to be helpful to you in your journey of buying a appropriate running shoe for you. And obviously we can solve, a range of problems depending on how your foot strike is. But generally speaking, I think that's, for me. So we had a ton of success for that as far as driving traffic. And then it's our responsibility to then move people. That's what I was mentioning earlier, is where are people in that funnel? And then once we get there, we get in the game, then it's a kind of a handoff to a degree. How do we get you from that piece of content over to then obviously the selector and buying a particular shoe that does meet whatever you learned from that stuff? But there was a lot of content that played out in social, a lot of content that we paid out in a lot of different areas to really solve what a very simple concept that a lot of people who are runners or getting into running face of, are you pronating, supinating, overpronation, neutral, what's right for me? Because you also look at inventory. If you got a lot of different options, that paradox of choice kind of starts to play out too. Like, which one of these shoes should I pick? Well, you ultimately end up with none because you're overwhelmed. So it solves some problems too. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I've been there, and I know a lot of customers are, especially in our world today when you've got so many brands, no matter what it is that you're buying. A lot of times it just, there's what I call buyer fatigue, just doing
Yeah.
the research and just trying to figure out what's going to be best. But yeah, I love that case study because what you mentioned was with ASICs, their whole goal was to really, solve that problem. How should a foot conform with these particular shoes? What's the best style that you particularly need? And that can go across the board, not just with their brand. You can apply that content and those that information to purchasing really any shoe. But they kind of took a gamble and said, okay, we'll leave it up to the customer. We'll give them the best information possible for them to make the best decision. And hopefully they come our way. But of course, they're going to be doing things, I know, to highlight aspects of their particular product, with the results that you're going to see when you're kind of making that decision. But yeah, that's good stuff. And a lot of businesses, don't really necessarily take those risks, right, by trying to empower their customers with that solid information. Yep. Like that.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, and it helps out at a search level, not just even on the site. I mean, I pulled up the numbers on it. It's a 213% increase in revenue on just from content like that. So
yeah, good stuff.
A big brand is significant.
Yeah, that is really significant. Well, yeah, this has been an awesome conversation, Reid. I'd love talking to you about this, and I know our listeners have, taken a lot of great nuggets from this conversation as well, and our viewers as well. So I always like to switch gears, though, at the very end here, just to close things out, and so our viewers and listeners can get to know you just a little bit better. If you don't mind sharing one closing fun fact about yourself that you think we'd be interested to know.
Well, I think get a sense here. I still in the over 40 leagues playing three days a week of soccer. I'm, a team-based player. I love team sports. I love, I figure, running a company like that is a team-based sport. So, and I think that exposure and awareness applies on so many levels. So, it's fun for me, whether it's a fun fact for anybody else. I find it pretty fun.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that definitely is a fun fact. I know, generally when you get up in age and, you're especially with the team sports, it's like it can become difficult. So yeah, it definitely hats off to you to be able to do that. Soccer really wasn't my sport. Basketball was. And so these days, I mean, other than just doing a little shooting around, I'm not playing any intense games these days just because of the wear and tear it takes on your knees and your joints. But that's good stuff, man. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. Lastly, before we do let you go, if you don't mind letting our listeners and viewers know the best way for them to reach you if they want to pick your brain any more about content optimization or anything under the sun of digital marketing.
Yeah. Well, so absolutely. Look me up on one of the easiest ways, obviously, is LinkedIn. So Reid Carr, ReidCarr, and it's that /Reid Carr, all one word. So thankfully I got in on early enough to have just my name on there. Or obviously our website at reddoor.biz. And I'm accessible that way as well. So, happy to keep talking.
All right. Well, that's awesome. Well, thank you for sharing that. We'll be sure to have those links in the show notes so people can get a hold of you or your team and, see how they can, how you guys can help them out. Well, it's been a pleasure, Reid. We definitely loved having you on today, the E-commerce Marketing Podcast.
Absolutely. My pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the E-commerce Marketing Podcast. If you've enjoyed this episode, be sure to rate, review, subscribe, and share it with everyone you know. Are you looking to take your digital marketing to the next level but are tired of weeding through countless YouTube videos with unproven and untrusted marketing strategies? Well, we have the answer for you. The More Sales Every Month online digital marketing course. In this information-packed course, you will learn effective keyword research, link building, content marketing, and much more to attract and convert your site visitors into paying customers. Just go to moresaleseverymonth.com and sign up today for a low one-time fee. In addition to this power-packed course, if you would like to get access to a growing repository of digital marketing articles, PDFs, and ebooks, check out getosi.com/resources and opt in to get full access to our library of priceless marketing information to help you take your digital marketing to the next level.